Welcome back to another episode of the Hormone Hub podcast, where we talk all things perimenopause, menopause, and have the conversations no one else is having. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hello, ladies, and welcome back to the Hormone Hub podcast. I'm your host, Kylie Pinwell, and today we have a very special guest with a really important message. So I would like to welcome Alvina Nadeem to the podcast. Welcome, Alvina. Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Kylie. I'm so happy to be here.
So Alvina is joining us. So we were just talking about the weather and where we live, where she lives. She's in Montreal in Canada. And of course, I'm on the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. So yeah, two very different weather experiences going on. Now, Alvina, we sort of connected, and your story and what you've been through and what you're currently going through, I was drawn to you immediately. And I'm so glad that you're here to sort of share your story. And I really want everyone to sort of listen and pay attention, because I think this is super important and it applies to all of us. So Alvina, would you like to sort of share where you're at and why we're chatting today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm here because I am currently going through chemotherapy for ovarian cancer. And it's really funny every time I say this, but I consider myself lucky in the sense that I was diagnosed early, the cancer was detected early, and I've been given an excellent prognosis, which is often not the case with ovarian cancer.
Yeah, 100%, and we were sort of talking earlier before we hit record, it's known as the silent killer. So Tell us a bit, like, how did your diagnosis, because obviously early diagnosis is key with ovarian cancer. So how did your diagnosis come about? Now, just for everyone listening, Alvina's 36 years old, so possibly a bit younger than a lot of our listeners, but, still an incredible story. So
yes. And the thing is, it's a very good point that you mentioned that too, because it's not something you think of ever, because the average age of ovarian cancer is not in the 30s. It's later. It's usually post-menopausal women. So, I feel like I'm here talking to young women, but older women as well, to anyone. Just if you have ovaries, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, so how did all of this, start for you?
Yeah, so actually, I would say in February is when I started to experience more, I would say, obvious symptoms, the things that led me to get checked, basically. So in February of this year, I started to lose weight drastically, like 10, 15 pounds. And it was unintentional. It wasn't something I was trying to do. I just didn't have an appetite. And at first, I myself thought like, oh, maybe I'm stressed out at work. Maybe I'm depressed. Like maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's this. And that's why I'm not hungry. So I was kind of like trying to fill in the gaps mentally myself of why am I not hungry? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that sometimes we often hear, like, oh, women, we have hormones, like it affects our, mental well-being and stuff. So often a lot of things are attributed to like the psychosomatic relationship between like, okay, your body and your brain. So it must be depression, it must be anxiety. And so you keep going there, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's something physical happening. So it was the weight loss. It was just feeling fatigued and tired because I wasn't eating much. And then I started to have like very specific symptoms, like having a period start 10 days in advance, which was really strange for me. It was a red flag because I was very regular. And so I was like, that's really strange. It's not a day or two, it's 10 days. And it didn't look right. It was not the right coloring. It looked like spotting. It looked like old, menses coming out or something. And it's, just want to mention here, it's one of those topics that like sometimes it's a bit taboo to talk about our reproductive system, but that's why I just want to talk so much. And like it feels like TMI, but I think it's important. We need to talk about this,
It's a Hormone Hub podcast. We talk about all of the things, and there is never anything such thing as too much information, because I think the more we talk about it, the more
We normalize it, right?
it becomes a normal conversation. And also too, women can kind of recognize like, oh, yeah, actually that's because I think we get used to our own normal.
Yeah.
But because it's our own normal, that doesn't necessarily mean it's okay. Like there could be, but because we're so normal.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we've been ignoring a problem for so long that's become our normal and it shouldn't, right?
100%.
So that was the initial kind of something is going on. And then I started to have pelvic cramps, like pain. It again felt like menstrual cramps, but I was not someone that used to have menstrual cramps. So I was like, why am I getting this? This was like the last time I had this was 20 years ago and I started having periods,
Yeah.
So I just felt like something was wrong and I decided to go and get checked.
Right.
And the funny thing is when I went to get checked, I didn't go in thinking anything. I just went in thinking like, oh, I haven't been eating. Maybe I caused a hormonal imbalance and therefore I have a period early or something. So I was thinking it was me who's stressed out at work or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And then they ran some blood tests to see, could it be pregnancy? Could it be this or that? They did like their first line of tests, basically blood tests and everything. And they did do a pelvic exam, but because I was in my period, it's not easy to do. So they still did it, but it wasn't like very conclusive. Yeah. And they just told me to, monitor my symptoms and come back if they persist or get worse.
Yeah.
And within a week, I had to go back. I was in so much pain, just like being in a car, just a regular bumps of a car ride were just like so painful for me. Oh, wow. So I went back and I went like, look, something is wrong. My period ended and it's still hurting as if I still have my period or I'm still having cramps. It's not normal. Yeah. And something new also started to happen at that point. And now that I know how big it was, it makes sense. When I would be lying down in bed, when I would turn, I felt like my internal organs were being pulled and shoved and tossed aside. I would literally hold my stomach and turn to not feel that pain and that feeling of being like I don't know how to describe it. It was just really strange. It was like really felt like someone was tugging on my internal organs. Yeah. And I was probably bloated, but I didn't pay attention to that. I thought like whatever, it happens during your cycle. I didn't really look at it as a symptom. But now when I look back, I was bloated. Yeah. So very typical of, the ovarian cancer symptoms you read about. But again, bloating, menstrual cramps, they don't sound very specific, right? It could be anything. It could be gas. It could be your period. It could be. Yeah. So that's why it's so elusive.
Yeah, amazing. And then, at what point did you realize that, hang on a second, this could be something more serious?
So at that second appointment, the doctor that was there, she decided to do an internal gynecological exam with her hand and everything. And she said to me, she asked me has anyone ever told you that they are having a hard time finding your cervix? Has any other doctor ever told you that? Yeah. And I was like, no, that's so weird. Isn't it there?
Where else would it be?
I was like, what kind of question is that? She's like, yeah, it's not aligned. I'm having a hard time. She had to use 3 speculums to see it. And she immediately was like, yeah, something is off because your uterus is not aligning with your vaginal canal. It's strange. So she decided to palpate with her hand and she said, oh, it feels a bit swollen, but it looks physically healthy. It's a nice color. It feels swollen as if you were pregnant, but we know that you're not because we did some tests. Yeah. So she said, go in for a ultrasound because maybe you have fibroids or something like that that's irritating your uterus and the lining and stuff. And so maybe it's inflamed.
Yes.
So that's really the moment where everything else kind of just unraveled quickly. I had my ultrasound within a week of that appointment. They found a mass on my left ovary. At that time, it was 8 to 9 centimeters. And then the radiologist was like, I can't really see much in the ultrasound. We just see it's a mass, but we can't see if it's a cyst. It's an ultrasound. We need to investigate further. I'm going to ask your doctor to do an MRI, request an MRI. within another few days, I had an MRI, and the next day is when I got that, that horrible call that no one wants to get.
Yeah.
Hey, doctor wants to see you. Can you come accompanied? So that's really, I think all of this happened within a span of 2-3 weeks max.
Amazing. And, how great that your medical team moved so quickly on that too, because
absolutely.
How many women, and I speak to sort of hundreds of women every year, and I went to the doctor and he said, let's just wait and see, or, it's just a normal getting older, or, we ran your bloods, everything's normal, so it's really, and I think the fact that you went back to that doctor, I mean, okay, granted you were in a lot of pain. So, but just you knew within yourself that something
is wrong.
Right. Yeah. For everyone listening, that's a really big thing. No one knows your body better than you do. So if you have a change in your cycle, if you have a change in bleeding, if you have a change in like pain level, anything like that, get it checked. So and push for it too. And it sort of seems crazy that we actually have to even say that. But, definitely pushing for pushing for more investigation, because if Alvina hadn't have done that, who knows where we'd be right now. So
and I think like, on one hand, like it's true that it feels very kind of upsetting to say, okay, why do I even have to do that? But I've started to look at it from a different lens, and I've started to say, hey, you know what? I'm grateful that I live in an era where, because of the unlimited amount of information that I have access to now through the internet, I can inform myself and go in as an informed, partner in my relationship with my doctor. Whereas, back in the day, your doctor said A, you said, okay, A. I'll do A, B, C, as you said, but now you can challenge them. You can ask them. And I think we need to use that to our advantage more and say, hey, I need to advocate for my well-being. And I'm a partner, in this relationship with my doctor. It's a partnership for my well-being.
100%. So true. Rather than us just sort of sitting there and, oh, well, he's the doctor. So he knows everything.
Exactly.
So,
and I just want to say one thing to what you said. And it honestly gives me chills every time. Because of this journey, I've met so many other women, young, different ages, who, are impacted by ovarian cancer, and they did not have the same story as me. There are some women who ended up waiting like a year before they even got like a proper diagnosis, because they weren't being listened to. Oh, go back. It's your hormones. It's nothing. Given all sorts of pills to address the symptoms, but not actually looking for why. Where the symptoms coming from in the first place. And when I hear that, I realize that I'm, again, lucky in the sense that it was detected early because of the steps that were taken by the people who took them. Like, I literally owe my life to that one doctor that said, hey, let's go do an ultrasound, because I don't like that it looks inflamed slightly.
Exactly. And that's it, like you hear all sorts of awful things, like women being sent home with antidepressants. It's just crazy. It's sort of like, But yes, ladies, advocate, push, if something's not right, keep asking, get answers. Don't just sit on this stuff, because, it might be that it's a fibroid. It might be, something completely. And I think when we're going through perimenopause and menopause, and we'll get to yours in a sec, but, have changes in our cycle. So what's normal, what's not? But again, listen to that instinct, listen to your body. And if something is more painful than it should be, if something is not quite right, always ask.
Right.
And be an advocate for your own health, for sure. Okay, so what happened? So we had the MRI, we had the phone call. What happened next?
So after that, it was pretty quick in the sense, I had that call at the end of March, and then beginning of April, I was meeting my gynecological oncologist. And the plan was, we need to get this mass out of you ASAP. And then at that point, they're not saying it's cancer. They're saying it looks like cancer, because there was no biopsy done at that time. And so the plan was, okay, we're going to do the surgery. And during surgery, we are going to do a small like in-op biopsy to see if these are cancer cells. So while I was on the operating table, that's what they did. They checked for yes or no, is it cancer?
Yep.
And then when I came to, that's when they confirmed it to me. So I was in the hospital all by myself, and my oncologist came to see me, and she held my hand and she said, "Hey, how are you doing? How's recovery?" And I was like, "So lay it on me." And she's like, "I'm so sorry. I thought it would be borderline, but there are cancer cells in there. We don't know exactly which type of cancer cells because there's a few kinds that could be possible with ovarian cancer." And she said, like, "We're going to wait on the biopsy results, which can take a while." But also she wanted me to focus on getting better from the surgery. It was an open abdominal surgery. So it's like a, pretty big scar, like a 10 to 15 meter opening, right? So it was a massive surgery.
Yeah. So not like a little laparoscopy or anything like that.
No, exactly. So she was saying that, right now I want you to focus on getting your health back physically. But she did say that from the looks of it, it looked like stage 1 because it was really contained within that huge mass, even though it was big. But it's like we caught it just in time. Like, it was on the point of bursting.
Yeah.
And actually it did burst during surgery.
Yeah.
So, but before they actually try to remove it, they do a wash. And in that wash, they take all that wash and they biopsy it. So now I know, X weeks after that the wash was clean, everything was clean, the nodes were clean. It was truly just within that ovary. So it was really like a miraculous stage 1 diagnosis. Yeah.
I would love to invite you to our Nourish and Thrive one-day retreat in the beautiful Noosa coming up on Saturday the 7th October. This menopause, gut health and pelvic wellness retreat is hosted by myself and also by the beautiful Alex May. Join us for this transformative one-day event which will give you all of the practical insights into navigating this perimenopause and menopause transition so you'll walk away confidently knowing how to nourish your body, optimize your pelvic floor and core function. Hope to see you there. Yeah, wow. Gosh. So then they removed the tumor in that surgery?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Then what happened?
So actually, okay, so this I think needs to be talked about. Like if anyone is going through something similar, please ask your gynecologist, your oncologist, if it's possible, because I've learned that not all surgeons or hospitals have the capacity to do that in-op analysis, because that changes the game from having 2 surgeries or just one, like I did.
Yes.
Right. So what we were able to do was before surgery, my oncologist sat down with me and she said, here is, like the logic diagram of if it's cancer, here's what we're going to do. If it's not cancer, here's what we're going to do. Because the goal was to ensure that after surgery, I'm living my best possible life, whatever the scenario may be, right? So if it's not cancer, we wanted to only remove, or I should say the opposite, we remove everything except the right ovary and keep the right ovary intact so that hormonally I could still kind of live a somewhat normal life as a young, woman. So, but if it was cancer, it was like, no, we got to remove everything, tubes, uterus, all of it. So, and ovaries as well. So that was something that I appreciated, having that feeling of being involved in that decision-making process. So when I came out, it wasn't like, sorry, like we had to do this. We had no choice. It was like, no, we already discussed about this. I knew this would happen if this was the case.
Yep.
So again, going back to building that partnership with your doctor is super important. And honestly, it's empowering because I felt like I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. You're part of that process, whereas that's certainly not always the case. So that's a really good point. Ask the questions. If they're not sharing the information with you, ask the questions. Well, what's involved? What happens? What are the different scenarios? So because I think a big part of fear is not knowing. So
exactly.
It just takes, it doesn't take the fear away, but it just sort of like, okay, worst case, it's going to be this. Best case, it's going to be this, or it might be something in the middle. But
not everybody sometimes wants to, but if you do want to know that you can ask the questions, because oncologists, they sometimes can be the opposite, where where they overshare and the patient's not ready and they're like, I did not need to know all of this information. Like, this is too much for me.
Yeah.
But whereas if you are willing to know more and are able to handle it, or have someone with you at least that could handle it for you, because there's different ways of managing. And if you have someone with you in the appointments, they can be the asker of questions.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's so many ways, but I think it's important. And like you said, like, the more we ask, the more we can kind of be part of this, the decision making, and feel involved.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So having your ovaries, tubes, uterus removed, that would pretty much spell instant menopause in my books.
Yes, absolutely. So it was pretty instant.
Yeah.
It was pretty instant. Yeah, it was, I think, about 48 hours after I started to experience like hot flashes and all kinds of stuff. And I noticed that, like we were saying earlier, I don't know if we said it during the call or before, but how I realized it was like related to like my stress level spiking. So whereas, before, in a normal setting, like when you get a bit nervous or you get those butterfly feelings, for me, it was just hot flashes instead. So, and every little thing, it could be going up the stairs, a little bit of physical stress, hot flash. I could be getting a call from someone that I haven't spoken to in a while and getting excited, hot flash.
Yeah.
And, and then at night, it's just like by default every night, hot flashes.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Did they explain that to you, that how that was going to roll out?
So that's something I have to admit. I love my oncology team and everyone, but they were just so focused on the cancer part and the chemo part that they didn't really put that much attention to that. And I was the one who had to bring it up and say, hey, what do we do about that? And that's kind of when they told me that we can't really do much except, manage each symptom on its own for now while I'm in treatment, because ovarian cancers are so hormonal. They can't really give me any kind of hormone therapy and things like that. So it was very much like, drink more water, increase your protein intake and your calcium intake, like try to manage each symptom on its own. And if you get lots of leg cramps, take magnesium. But it was very like, each symptom needs to be managed alone. For example, I was thinking maybe I could take some melatonin because I started to have insomnia, and I still do have it as part of the menopause experience.
Surprise!
And so I was like, okay, can I take melatonin? And she was like, well, not really, because there are some studies showing that it could interfere with chemo. So, we're going to take Ativan, which is usually, I think, used to treat anxiety, but it does help and knock me out. But it's something that you can grow a dependence to. So I'm very like cautious, and I don't want to use it every night. So I use it as like a reset for myself. Like, if I'm having multiple nights in a row where I'm really having a hard time, like, okay, I'll reset my system with this today and hope that tomorrow I don't need it. But it's been mostly like that.
Yeah. And I think that's it. And I think that's a very common experience that I hear, like women who've been breast cancer treatment or, hysterectomy, gone into that surgical or that chemical menopause, and they're not told, oh, by the way, you're going into instant menopause, which means, all of these things. And that's where
it's like they say it, like, for example, my doctor did say menopause, but I didn't really understand what that meant
for me,
for my life. Exactly. What should I expect?
That's the thing. And it has sort of like rolling impacts, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be horrible forever, but it just means that there's an adjustment there, because your hormones effectively have just been ripped out literally ripped out of your body. So it's managing, rather than managing the hot flushes which come with that drop in estrogen. It's sort of like, okay, how do we maintain your body temperature? How do we, like, that internal thermostat? But also, like, blood sugar becomes an issue, bone density becomes an issue, cardiovascular health. So it's sort of, there's long-term implications there as well for you down the track. But in the meantime, you've still got enough going on. So what sort of treatment are you undergoing at the moment?
So right now, because of the stage 1 diagnosis, they're doing a 6 rounds of chemotherapy, carboplatin and Taxol, basically, which is the go-to for epithelial ovarian cancer cases. And after that, I spoke actually to my oncologist last week, and I said, look, we're more than midway. I've had my 4th treatment. I'm ready to hear, like, is there something coming after? And do I need to do any maintenance type of chemo or something else? And she said, well, no, actually, with you, after these 6 rounds, that should be it. Then it's a 5-year follow-up. Every 3 months at first, I'd go in for a checkup, and then every 6 months to make sure that I am cancer-free. And then at the 5-year mark, I think that's when they officially declare you like cancer-free. You don't need to be followed up so intensely and so closely.
Yeah, amazing. And just to, show the pure, I guess, commitment of this woman and her 4th treatment this morning. So and I think to actually come on as a podcast guest the day you have chemo treatment, I was like, I was not expecting that. So I do so very much appreciate you coming on the podcast today of all days. But, 4 down, 2 to go. So,
yes.
Which is amazing. So where has this sort of taken your life? Because you are now a very, you wouldn't have seen this 12 months ago, 6 months ago, 8 months ago.
Yeah. So I think, right now, okay, first of all, I have to say that I really appreciate and I'm so grateful for like where and when this is happening to me in my life. I have 2 kids. And that's all I wanted, in the sense that I wasn't expecting or wanting a 3rd child. So like my family was complete. I'm in a good place in my life. I live in Canada. So, healthcare, I don't have to worry about the chemo bill coming in or anything like that. Yeah. And I'm on sick leave. So I can truly take this time to focus on myself and at the same time kind of explore like, okay, like what do I want to do with this? Of course, like anyone else, I started off asking, why is this happening to me? Like, why? But whys don't have answers. And so I decided like, I'm not going to ask why. I'm going to say, what do I want to do with this moment? How do I want to define this defining moment in my life? What do I want to do with this thing that is happening? And I think the best way to describe it is the feeling I've been getting is like, there's a fire around and all of the houses are burning down. And I'm one of the few houses that was like damaged but still standing. And so of course I'm focused on like repairing the house, but when I step out I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm one of the few standing. And now I feel this duty to say, hey, I need to use the fact that I'm still standing to raise awareness and share more. And like, let's talk about this. It's not taboo to talk about our private parts. And like, you use these moments to help raise awareness really and bring attention to this.
Yeah, look, and, if one woman listening to this podcast today, takes herself off to be checked, like that's,
Yeah, I've accomplished my mission, Yes, exactly.
Oh, gosh. Wow, what a story. And I'm so glad that your prognosis is looking fantastic. And I really do want to follow you and sort of see where you take this, because I think you've got such a beautiful way that you've framed it and it's such a beautiful attitude. And I love that whys don't have answers, because you can beat ourselves up all day asking why, but it's sort of like now you've got a beautiful platform to bring awareness to ovarian cancer and spread your message that way. So amazing. So anything else, any final words that you would love to share with the audience?
Yeah, so I think something that I don't talk often about, and I think this is a great place to do it, is something that was kind of lingering in those first initial months of February, March was I describe it as this feeling of doom. Like I really felt this sense of something is wrong. And again, remember I was saying I kept associating it to maybe, is it depression? Am I depressed? And I was having these really dark thoughts and it was just really gloomy and stuff. And I was like, and it was that voice that really made me go check what's wrong. Yep. And whether it was intuition or my body, trying to talk to me in a way to say like, something is wrong, Alvina, go get checked. And it really made me feel it made me reconnect with my body. I find this whole experience has been about reconnecting with my body and learning the language it speaks to listen to it better. Because I find that as a society, we have completely disconnected ourselves with our bodies. We're very much in our heads, like intellectually, right? Like we're all about getting the job and getting the degrees and getting educated and intellectually
push through, do more. Yeah.
Right. But we've lost like that connection with our inner like being, but physically too, like with our internal organs. Like we don't know what goes on in there. We have to go literally to a doctor to tell us what's wrong with us, right? Because we don't have that communication channel established or maybe understood. And the more we're learning about the gut and everything, we're realizing like it's like the second brain of our body. And I'm like, hey, we need to be paying attention to our gut, because with ovarian cancer, a lot of the symptoms do come from your gut. You get stomach aches, you get like diarrhea, constipation, all that stuff, but it's like your gut sending you these signals.
Absolutely.
So all of this to say that like my message is really like, listen to that inner voice. If something is telling you there's something wrong, listen to it. And maybe it is wrong. Maybe it's okay. You maybe just spent, a day at the doctor's office, but that's okay. Your life is worth it.
100%. And I think, what you've been through sort of puts all of that into perspective as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I've sort of said to clients before, listen to your body, exactly what you just sort
absolutely.
of said, and listen to the little whispers before they start screaming at you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's so right.
Just don't go away on their own. So, so thank you, Alvina. That was, I think this is one of the highlight episodes for me of the show that we've recorded, because
wow.
And our viewers don't get to see your beautiful face. Like Alvina's sitting there. She had chemotherapy treatment this morning. She's beaming. She's got this beautiful smile and a very sort of serene, calming nature about you. So, which is lovely. I've just really enjoyed having you, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much.
Here. Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
My pleasure. So, everyone, ladies, listen to your body, go and get checked, do it for Alvina, and do it for all the women who didn't listen as well. So there's a flip side to that story. So, be Alvina and listen to your body. If something's not right, get it checked. All right, Alvina, thank you so much. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we will see you in the next episode. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. You can head on over to the show notes at kyliepinwill.com/podcast, where you'll find all the links. Now, before we go, it would mean the world to me if you'd head on over to your favourite podcast channel, subscribe and leave a review. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Then stay tuned for next week's episode, and I can't wait to see you then.